Yeah, I can see the snowstorm behind you.
Indeed, indeed. We
Yeah.
actually had quite a big one last night.
So my daughter's in New York and she was telling me about it.
Oh, is that right? Well done. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Very
that's
nice. Good to see.
fantastic. Good to see you as well. Thanks for doing this.
So when do we start?
Oh, over
I
to you,
think
Scott.
I
So,
think we are starting now. So let's go ahead and dive in. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining this special panel discussion on Safer Internet Day, focusing on infusing cyber peace in cyberspace. My name is Scott Shackelford, and I'm a professor at Indiana University, where I chair our cybersecurity program and direct the Ostrom Workshop. And I have the honor today of introducing a series of wonderful panelists to help guide our discussion about infusing cyber peace in cyberspace. So I'll do that, then I'll give you a sense of kind of where we're headed with this particular discussion, provide some introductory remarks, and then turn things over from there. So we are very lucky to be joined today by Vinit Kumar, founder and president of the CyberPeace Foundation, along with his colleague, Nitish, also from the CyberPeace Foundation, and Lieutenant General Dr. Rajesh Pent, the former National Cyber Security Coordinator from the government of India. And as well as a special address, I should note as well, pre-recorded address by Miss Julie Inman, the Grant E-Safety Commissioner from the government of Australia. So it's really a star-studded lineup to talk to us today about this concept of cyber peace and how we can do more to infuse it in cyberspace. We'll be turning to those other wonderful guest speakers shortly, but first I wanted to provide just a couple of introductory remarks just to really get us going before turning to Miss Julie Inman's pre-recorded message, and then from there turning it over to Vinit and then to Lieutenant General Pont. So it's funny, this concept of cyber peace has been on my mind at least for almost a decade now, but every day I'm just reminded of its importance. Just yesterday, for example, here in the United States, we got news of a Florida water utility, which was successfully breached. And the hacker in that case was able to increase the preponderance of a special chemical in the water supply, which would, if it wasn't caught in time, have led to potentially thousands of people getting sick or worse, right? And this follows up similar incidents in Israel and unfortunately all over the world over recent weeks and months. So the topic of how we can do a better job at protecting our vulnerable critical infrastructure from misuse and abuse is very much front of mind for me, for I know many of you beaming in right now as well, and I know for our panelists too. And that's coming off of other recent high-profile breaches such as SolarWinds. We're doing a lot of work on the academic side, including a new edited volume on CyberPeace, which is coming out with Cambridge University Press here in just a couple months. It's going to be open access, so free. Anybody can access and download those contents. So that'll be coming up soon. But really, it's just one of the first steps in a marathon that we all are taking together to define this term of cyber peace, right? What does it really mean? How can we achieve it? For what it's worth, just to provide a quick note of context, there's differing schools of thought for where the term came from. It looks like that it originated in right around 2008 as part of a special report from the World Federation of Scientists at the time that likened cyber peace in part to a universal order of cyberspace built on a wholesale state of tranquility, which obviously sounds fantastic. We could all go for that these days, especially as we're living so much of our personal and professional lives online given the pandemic. But still, there's not a lot of clarity on what are the particular core aspects of cyber peace that we can all agree on, that we can have been built some consensus around. What combination, for example, of deterrence by denial makes sense here, right? How can we do more to protect our assets? So in this way, in this book in particular, we're trying to define cyber peace in terms of 4 pillars. That includes respecting human rights and freedoms, spreading internet access along with cybersecurity best practices, strengthening government's mechanisms to provide more different and different stakeholders voices to empower them to have a say and a stake in the future of the internet, and to promote stability and sustainable development in cyberspace. So that is a little bit of background for this topic, but as I said, there's many, many differing approaches and schools of thought. So we're lucky to be joined by, as I said, such a wonderful group to talk to us a little bit about this concept today, to see how they view CyberPeace and how we can all achieve some measure of it by working together. And first, we're going to be turning to a pre-recorded video message from Miss Julie Inman, who, as I said, is the Grant E-Safety Commissioner from the Government of Australia, for her thoughts on this topic before turning to Vinit and Lieutenant General Pent from there, I believe. So if the recorded message is ready, perhaps we can turn to Julie's message now. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Julie Inman Grant, and I'm Australia's E-Safety Commissioner. To the esteemed panel and others in attendance, E-Safety thanks you for your involvement in this important initiative. It was an absolute pleasure to be involved in the Global CyberPeace Challenge and to see the creative solutions to the pressing problems our society faces, which we also see playing out online. The topics covered in the Peace-a-thon, including addressing online child sexual abuse, stalkerware, technology-facilitated abuse and intimate partner violence, are key areas of concern and work for e-safety. E-safety is the world's first government online safety regulator whose sole purpose is the protection of its citizens online. We achieve this through a focus on three areas: protection, prevention, and proactive change. We have a range of civil powers to protect people and compel takedown of illegal and harmful content, whether it's pro-terrorist content, child sexual abuse material, image-based abuse, or serious cyberbullying directed at a child. While our reporting schemes are vital to the protection of people online, in these cases we are only able to act after the damage has been done. To prevent these harms from occurring in the first place, we focus on prevention through resources and outreach programs to educate people so that they can have more positive and empowering experiences online. E-safety firmly believes in the importance of proactive change, getting ahead of the curve. Safety by Design is e-safety's world-leading initiative, which puts responsibility for user safety back onto the technology companies themselves. This means that technology companies should be embedding safety protections into their design, development, and deployment processes. We're really passionate about this initiative and are working hard to strengthen online safety across borders and create systemic change through Safety by Design. On top of all this, we're committed to sharing information and collaboration with other governments and organizations, both locally and globally, as they work to protect and safeguard people online. We recognize that online safety is a global issue and that solutions to the risk of online harms can come from anywhere in the world, no matter where you are or what you do. Global cyber issues have never been more critical. We know the online world has no borders and requires international collaboration and proactive technical solutions to prevent harms. Let me close by saying that the challenges facing us engaged in online safety are indeed great, but I have real hope for the future. I encourage us all to think about the fundamental human rights that transcend all cultures, religions, and borders, like the safety, dignity, and human rights of children. There's more that unites us than divides us in our common goal to civilize the internet, and only by working together can we truly hope to achieve that aim. I want to thank you so much for listening and allowing me to tell you a little bit about e-safety and our approach to online safety. I extend my best wishes and gratitude to the panel for your contributions towards making the online world a safer place for everyone. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you so much, Julie, for that wonderful presentation there. That was great. As you heard, there are many topics that unite us in this space, including protecting children, of course, and other vulnerable minority groups. So we'll be hearing more about that as we go through here. And I see already that folks are taking advantage of the question and answer feature. So please do upload your questions, and we'll make sure to turn to those just as soon as we finish this first initial round of presentations. But for now, we're going to turn to Vinit Kumar, founder and president of the CyberPeace Foundation, to tell us a little bit about all the amazing work that the foundation has been up to in this context of building capacity and pushing this idea of cyber peace, including through the CyberPeace core. So Vinit, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Scott. And it's really a pleasure to have you there as a moderator and General Pant as one of the panelists. So it's really great to be a part of the panel. And cyber peace is one subject that has been very dear to me right from the beginning. And that actually led to the establishment of the CyberPeace Foundation. So some of the key activities, and I would say some of the key initiatives of the foundation through which we are trying to infuse cyber peace in the cyberspace are like inclusion and outreach, because we strongly believe that we have to reach people at the grassroots level. We have been doing series of awareness campaigns. We started from India, but now expanding to Africa also, and eventually plan to go to the other countries. So we have been doing series of campaigns in the urban areas, in the village areas, where people are first-time users of internet, and in fact they are facing challenges. So trying to see what kind of challenges these people are facing, and also as a foundation, we are trying to solve those challenges with the help of our partners, UN agencies, government, industry, academia, everyone. That's the kind of work that we are trying to do through inclusion and outreach. With inclusion and outreach, we also strongly believe that awareness is to be established in a very sustainable manner. So it's not just you give a small presentation and share a list of do's and don'ts and then you are done. It should be something more than that. And eventually, CyberPeace Core is how, in fact, in the year 2013, it emerged as a model to spread awareness in a sustainable manner. As on date, CyberPeace Core is present in around 40 countries across the globe. And on an average, we have 50 CyberPeace Core members in every state here in India, spreading the message of peace and responsible behavior in the cyberspace. That's one of the key initiatives where the volunteers are taking the message ahead. Volunteers are taking the message in their own language, in their own jurisdiction, and trying to simplify it as much as they can. So that is one key initiative through which, again, we are trying to infuse peace in the cyberspace. The other thing is research and innovation. Through research in innovation, we have been trying to collect, again, the feedback of the users, trying to collect different kinds of campaigns, phishing campaigns, malware that are there in the ecosystem, which is causing damage to the vulnerable population. So this is again through the research initiatives, through the centers of excellence. We are trying to share the problems with the government as well, with the UN agencies on what kind of issues people are facing on the ground and how these people can be protected. We have been doing, you just heard Julie speaking about the Global Cyber Peace Challenge. Well, the very first Cyber Peace Challenge we started here in India in 2017, where in fact we had the pleasure of having two Prime Minister, the Honorable Prime Minister of India and also the Sri Lanka, in fact, in the prize ceremony, where we shared problem statements on the different issues and the challenges that the cyberspace has. And people, again, coming from industry, academia, civil society, government, coming from different walks of life, participated in the challenge and then contributed solutions to the problem statement. So it was something like crowdsourcing cyber peace. And I have a paper, Scott, on crowdsourcing cyber peace that you are aware of. So crowdsourcing is the model that we are working, whether it is the cyber peace core, whether it is the research and innovation. This is basically, I would say, the heart of the organization, where the entire work and activities are crowdsourced, and that's how we are trying to, again, inject cyber peace in the cyberspace. The third vertical that we have been working strongly again is policy, advocacy, and cyber diplomacy. So several initiatives holding multi-stakeholder dialogues, again, and multilateral dialogues on cyber peace. The very first, in fact, we launched last year in September during pandemic, the cyber peace dialogue. This is something that we wish to bring important issues in front of different stakeholders, and collectively we have to find a solution. Like there are several problems in the I would say community, and let me also share, because I have worked closely with the law enforcement agencies. Investigation is a difficult task. And on an average, in fact, that's what I have heard from the ground, and I've seen the officers on the ground struggling, that any data that if they have to procure it from a foreign land, it takes them around 5 to 6 months to get data around a particular crime. So investigation, I feel, is very time taking. So our majority of focus is basically on prevention and also forming a kind of a informal information sharing network where immediate relief can be given to vulnerable population, also organizations and agencies who need immediate help. We have seen the kind of attacks that have happened on the healthcare during pandemic, and also non-profits are under attack. So all these actually need immediate relief and support, and that's what we are trying to achieve through different dialogues, conversations that we are trying to do at a global level. Connecting all the three verticals is our collaboration and connect. And if you see closely, any initiative that we take, that CyberPeace Foundation Day, we make sure that we have different collaborators. We have collaborated with the government. We always make sure that we collaborate with the government. We collaborate with the industry. We collaborate with the academia and the civil society. So that's the kind of model that internally at CyberPeace we are trying to do. Also, I'd like to highlight some of the key steps and goals that we strongly believe, and we have been working right from the start of the foundation. And the goal number one is upholding human rights in the cyberspace. Whether it is online or the offline context, every individual is entitled to some basic right. As such, organization and government must safeguard these human rights of their employees, customers, and clients, associates, and citizens in the cyberspace now, because the same human rights and the internet rights, I feel, is almost the same. The second step is adherence to the international cyber norms by the countries. The need for international cyber norms was felt quite a while ago when state-sponsored cyber attackers began targeting nations for intelligence. Internationally agreed upon cyber laws ensure adherence to standard set of digital criteria and restrictions, ultimately helping establish global cyber peace. The third step here, or the goal you can say, is protecting of critical networks, infrastructure, and information. One of the sustainable goals of cyber security is the protection of critical networks, infrastructure, and information. The vital information and infrastructure of a nation are its most significant asset. As such, threats from terrorists, malicious actors, state-sponsored hackers need to be dealt with the right at the forefront. Measures like that of the Indian government, such as setting up the National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center, the NCIIPC, or the CNI, which is there in UK, for protecting the country's CII, are needed to ensure the cyber peace, the global cyber peace. Goal number 4, or step number 4, is cooperation for international cyber law enforcement. While it is challenging to identify the instances or issues that should come under international law or cyberspace, there are multiple national, international, and private bodies working towards it. Their purpose is to establish global cyber peace, and they expect member nations to share intelligence with them regarding cyber attacks or suspicious activities for prompt analysis. The step number 5 is safe spaces online for children and protecting the vulnerable population. I've already elaborated, so I'll not speak much on this particular step. The next step is responsible and peaceful usage of emerging technologies. The discussion on emerging technologies, digital technology, remains incomplete without the mention of drones, automated vehicles, AI, deepfake, machine learning. The future is filled with robots trained with machine learning and automatic cars, drones that aren't dependent on manual human operation. However, such advanced technology also hints towards more significant cyber risks that manifest in manipulating face and voice recognition and passwords. The R's need is to ensure that emerging technologies are used responsibly and do not harm fellow humans or nations. The next step is safeguarding emergency systems and non-profit, like the healthcare or the non-profit organ, which I was just talking about. The emergency systems and non-profits often have a rich database with personal and financial details of affluent individuals and organizations, which once leaked may result in spear phishing and more severe forms of cyber attacks. And this is in addition to the data and financial loss that these systems undergo themselves. Hence, one of the goals of CyberPeace is to safeguard the data and network of emergency systems and nonprofits. The next goal is global cyber awareness and education. I have altogether 10 goals. I'm on the 8th one, 2 more to go. CyberPeace is best implemented when every internet user is aware of the implication of his clicks and online presence. Cyber adversaries are always on the prowl, looking for security loopholes and opportunities to infect networks with their malicious link and trojans, malwares, or ransomwares. So again, this space is filled with, these kinds of malicious programs or cyber weapons, as you may call it today. Hence, spreading awareness at a global level is imperative for the establishment of the cyberpeace world. The next step is uninterrupted access to cyberspace. Frequent disruption and system breakdowns make this cyber experience distasteful for the users. One of the primary objectives of CyberPeace strategy is to facilitate a seamless virtual experience for users. And the final step, continuous CyberPeace effort. Apart from CyberPeace Foundation, a lot of organizations have been focusing on the CyberPeace, like the International Telecommunication Union, the IETF, the World Wide Web Consortium. We have multiple organizations like the GFC, the CyberPeace Institute are now coming into this space, which need to be followed by members for continued global cyberpeace. We need more and more organizations like them who need to come so that the word of peace is spread far and wide. Nation and enterprises must consistently make efforts to establish harmony at the cyber front. So this is all I have to say, Scott. I can go on and on, but I would say the basic 10 steps, the basic 10 principles that we follow within CyberPeace Foundation, I have described it all here. I've written it in the notes like a cheat sheet so that I remember word by word and share everything here. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Vinit, and for all the wonderful work that the CyberPeace Foundation does along all those different dimensions you just identified, which I couldn't agree more, are just incredibly important. Information sharing, right? So vital, especially at a time when, frankly, walls are going up around the world to make that more difficult. The antiquated legal frameworks that we have to work with absolutely need to be updated. And we will talk more about cyber norms, I'm sure, during our discussion and Q&A shortly. So there's plenty more to follow up on, but I want to make sure that we turn to our distinguished other panelists first before we get into that discussion. So if that's okay, without further ado, we're going to turn to Lieutenant General Dr. Rajesh Pent, the National Cybersecurity Coordinator for the Government of India next. And thank you so much for being here.
Namaste, Scott.
Namaste.
Yeah, that seems to be the greeting of the day. And greeting of the day to all the other participants. We've had a good start, I think, to this webinar. Julie spoke about the e-safety commissioner. That sounds like an interesting appointment. Vinit, of course, has covered an entire thesis on the subject. So interesting to listen to him. And let me first thank the CyberPeace Foundation for giving me this honor of a keynote on infusing cyberspace in cyberspace during the Safer Internet Day. I think somewhere we forgot about the Safer Internet Day. And I was just Googling it, and I find that it is celebrated in February in almost 170 countries. And it covers all the things that we've been speaking of, including cyberbullying, etc. So there is a lot happening in various pockets for ensuring cybersecurity. You see, the starting point is that while we have land, air, sea, and space and cyber domains, there are rules in the other domains. So land have various territorial rules. Waters also have limits of what is your economic zone and what are your territorial waters, let's say 12 nautical miles from the coast, etc. Even in the air, there is jurisdiction of that particular country. When you fly over a particular country, like I remember once I was coming back from Israel and flying over Saudi Arabia, and they did not offer me a drink because they said, while we are over Saudi Arabia, we are not allowed to offer drinks. So these rules exist, land, sea, and air. Unfortunately, in cyber, there are two very distinct differences. One is that the space is expanding. In the other domains, the space is fixed, unless you talk of that millimeter shift that is taking place, the tectonic plates and all that. But the cyber world is growing at 30% per year. The breadth and scope of cyber world, and you can just take an example of, let's say, IoT, is today 17 billion IoT devices. In the next 3 years, they're going to be 30 billion, right? So, I mean, that's just an approximate based on the advent of 5G, etc. So the first point is that the space is growing, and the second is that the rules are unfortunately not being followed. 2007 post Estonia attack, we had the Talon 1.0. 2017, we had the Talon 2.0, where a lot of definitions were written about what is cyber weapon, etc. There was a lot of excitement when the Talon manual came out. Today, when I speak to my contemporaries across the world, I rarely hear the Talon manual, right? Secondly, just last week, we concluded the meeting, the fourth meeting of the 6th UNGGE. So I'm sure the CyberPeace Foundation is well aware of the two committees that the United Nations has set up, the UN group of government experts and the open-ended working group. So the UNGGE is 25 countries, India is one of their members. And basically, we have been given 2 years to finalize the 11 norms that had been drafted in 2015 in the 4th UNGGE. Because in the 5th UNGGE, the talks had collapsed because they could not come to a consensus. Because there were two very clear sides that were emerging. Why I'm highlighting all this is because unless we realize what is happening at the highest level, we can continue our efforts, but at the end of the day, cyber security is a team sport. It is an international team sport, in fact, right? And unless there is a sense of collaboration between countries, it will not work out. So the 5th one, UNGGE collapsed because, for example, human rights, Vinit was talking of human rights. The Russian side said that human rights, the international human rights law is only for wartime conditions, whereas cyber attacks take place during peacetime also. So the IHL does not apply in this. Now, he mentioned those 10 goals that he has set. I would suggest and recommend that you try and align yourself also to the UNGGE 11 norms. Let's say this talk of cooperation between states. It talks of, in case of ICT incidents, states should consider all relevant information. States should not knowingly allow their territory to be used for internationally wrongful acts using ICTs. Now, this is now realism versus idealism happening, right? So we are wanting something, but we know something else is happening. We know that attacks are taking place. In fact, India is one of the top 3 attacked countries in the world. And when you come to any of our NOCs, you come to our national, any security operations center or something where they have a global map, you will find that 40% of the attacks are coming. The last IP is in the US. And the reason we also know that it's because of a virtual machine or a server that has been hired in one of the services which is offered by the friendly democratic countries. So these criminals, they are very smart. They know, which are the countries which are friendly and, whom to attack. They also know that which countries have not signed the MLAT with each other. So there will be no legal jurisdictions. So let me just finish the 11 norms first. It also talks of assisting each other, prosecuting terrorist and criminal use of ICTs. Now, we've tried the MLAT, we've tried the letter of rogatory. Things are very, very difficult, and Vinit also mentioned it. Then it talks of should respect Human Rights Council resolutions 28, 2016. 2613 on promotion, protection, and employment of human rights. Things are being written, but they're not happening on ground. States should take appropriate measures to protect their critical infrastructure from ICT threats. Now, this is a very interesting discussion. The other day, we had a seminar hosted by my Israeli friends on the subject, is anything not critical? So Scott mentioned about water. Like in India, we have 6 sectors we have classified as critical sectors, like transportation and strategic sectors. In US, there are 14 sectors. In some countries, in Europe, there are different. In fact, in Netherlands, let me tell you, the Heineken beer factory is considered as a critical sector. So depending on your national interest, you have different national critical sectors. But the point is that today, every sector, because of the automation that has come in fact, in India, I can tell you, we are going in for a large number of national level platforms for the Digital India campaign and the initiatives. So everything is vulnerable now. I mean, a thing like food, or you may say there's a food distribution system that takes place. So if someone hacks into it and makes millions of tons of grain go somewhere else where it is not required, so he's achieved his way. So this is a very serious aspect as to what is critical and how to protect critical. Then the integrity of the supply chain. That is also one of the norms. I'm just reading out from the norms, the aspects that they're talking of. This has become a very serious issue these days. And you're aware that in the US, there is a concept of a clean network. Now that they are promoting a clean network, a clean path, where they are saying that anything which is not China will be considered as clean, right? Including the submarine cable, etc. So the supply chain aspect is getting more important. And although I hate the word of deglobalization and decoupling, but I cannot lie to you and close my eyes as to what is happening in the world, because we are seeing it all over. Whether it is the latest chip wars that are going on, there's a sudden scramble for chipsets, etc. So these are. That's why I said there's a difference between realism and idealism in what we're talking of, and of course the other 2 norms of the 11 are there. So point is that what should be done? I think we have to tackle the entire spectrum. Firstly, who's doing this? So who are the threat actors? There are individuals, they are organized criminal groups, they are insiders, they are cyber mercenaries, there are terrorists and hacktivists, and there are state actors and state-sponsored groups. So that is the spectrum of people who are indulging in these activities and disturbing the peace, if I may say so, in the cyber world. How are they doing it? They are doing it by attack vectors such as phishing, social engineering, Trojans, use of infectors, ransomware, which is getting more and more serious, and adware. And ransomware, as we were just talking of, that they are targeting the research centers, they are targeting hospitals, because they know from where the money will come. And in US, we have seen that entire cities have been targeted. So this is, and what are the vulnerabilities? The vulnerabilities are in the classic people, process, and technology. So there is a need to, if you want to protect the national cyberspace and if you want to bring peace in the cyberspace, all these aspects will have to be addressed, right? So the entire ecosystem will need to be addressed, and there are certain actions which will have to be done, let's say before an incident takes place, certain during an incident, certain after the incident takes place. So that is where a lot of this national strategies come in, and the national organizations come in. And of course, the most important is the cyber hygiene, because the hard truth is that vulnerabilities will continue to exist as long as we depend on digital systems. If vulnerabilities will continue, then attacks will take place. And if attacks takes place, then the attribution of these attacks will be as difficult as what it is today. So if that is the world that we are living in, we have to do what is called as cyber hygiene. It is as simple as that, today, in order to survive in the digital world, there are only 2 things that have to be done. One is personal hygiene, if you want to stay alive. And second is cyber hygiene, if you want to stay digitally safe. So personal hygiene and cyber hygiene. And cyber hygiene has to start from a very young age. It has to be something like how we were taught that cleaning your teeth and brushing your teeth every day is important for you. And, all the good habits that we've learned from our home, from our school, etc. So it has to become a second nature now, cyber hygiene. There is no other option considering the way forward and the large number of devices that are going to take place both in the IoT space, in the industry 4.0 space, and the other technological progress that are taking place. Every day you find a new app coming out, etc. So broadly, these are the things that are on top of my mind at the moment. But at the end, let me just compliment once again the CyberPeace Foundation for taking this initiative. I think there is some space in which you can work a little more closer with the government, because at times when these meetings take place and we need some more examples and points to make our case stronger, that is the time you can help us with the outreach that you have. So definitely in the next UNGG meeting, maybe we'll keep you on a call so that we can take advantage and then make our point a bit stronger with some examples, etc. So let me end on that note and compliment the CyberPeace Foundation for doing an excellent job. Sometimes a small group of people who are passionate and dedicated achieve a much larger objective. And there are many examples to that. I think you guys in the CyberPeace Foundation are something like that. So well done, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. That was fantastic. And you covered so much material that I wish we had, frankly, a lot more time to dig into because it's so important and pressing. But we will hopefully have just a minute to do that. For now, though, I believe we do have one final speaker. Nitish is the head of the Technology Law and Policy Group at the Foundation, and I believe wanted to provide just a few remarks as well.
Hi. Thanks, Scott. I'm so sorry, I'm on the move, so I'll be just brief here. So I'll just echo what Vinit's already talked about, our work enhancing cyberpeace. But in relation to that, I think the common threads that we've seen emerge from both Reverend Pant and Vinit's talk are about cooperation. And I'd speak on behalf of our Technology Law and Policy Research Group. Some of the most pressing challenges and issues that we see actually emerge out of that. And there's a lot that goes around. I think if we had some representative from the tech sector, from the industry would appreciate this also. And I believe Lieutenant Pant and Vinit will also. When I say that there's that disconnect that exists between the pace at which technology is doing a lot of things. And I forget, and I would like to credit whoever said this, but I remember, tech for tech is no tech. Unless tech does good at the same time and can be controlled, then it means something. Otherwise, there's a lot that we can do just with the power of tech, but we need policies, overarching cooperation, say institutional machinery, and cyber hygiene. I believe, as Lieutenant Pant has also very, very clearly pointed out, that cyber hygiene is one of those pillars that pretty much everything hinges on, because if we follow those practices, certain norms that cut across countries, interestingly, that aren't nation bound, that essentially cut across countries, that play a vital role. But yeah, I think thanks for this opportunity. I think I'll largely echo these points about cooperation, practicing cyber hygiene, and in the end, I'm a lawyer, so I would definitely highlight the fact that there have to be certain norms and certain rules of the game here, because again, like highlighted, IHL does not apply, so then where are we? And there are so many issues. I'm reminded of what happened in Yahoo versus Lycra way back when there was sale of Nazi memorabilia on Yahoo in Germany. And it played sort of so interestingly how different jurisdictions wanted buy-in. And even now we see that years, like more than a decade into that, we still see that content is, for example, geo-blocked. Censorship happens in sort of a whole geo-blocking environment. So we need to cut across those things and have, at least for certain things, I believe there's national sentiments and a lot of things at play. But when we say in an overarching sense, there are some things that can be set in stone. And just to put that last nail there, we talk about these things like non-consensual pornography, things like child sexual abuse. Those are certain themes that emerge that can be internationally regulated. I mean, there's a lot of work that is going on, but still norms and sort of rules and accountability of companies, accountability of governments in that regard is still to be seen. Maybe a distant dream at this point, but I'm sure with the talks that are happening and regulators and everyone coming into the picture, I think that's going to move pretty soon as well. So thank you. I'm so sorry about the background noise. Thank you.
Oh no, it's fine. No, thank you so much, Nitish. Excellent points. And to some extent echoing, like you said, Vinit, as well as Lieutenant General Pent, just in terms of the need for cyber hygiene, at least as important in some ways as personal hygiene these days. And this notion of critical infrastructure being in the eye of the beholder. And if everything is critical, is anything critical, right? I think these are such important points to think about. We don't have nearly enough time to do justice to all of the issues that have been raised by the excellent speakers, but we'll try just to take maybe a couple of questions to tease a few of these out before we have to conclude today. And maybe we'll start with this idea of, how we can track, our progress toward achieving, say, some of these goals, whether it's the 11 cyber norms that you kindly mentioned, Dr. Pent, or the 10 overarching CyberPeace goals that you kind of referenced there, Vinit. We actually had a CyberPeace forum even a few weeks ago where we kind of brainstormed a list of 17 CyberPeace goals, kind of mirroring the Sustainable Development Goals, right? But I'm wondering, just in the panelists' minds, some of these are so important, of course, but also a bit nebulous, right? In terms of protecting, children, for example, online, or practicing cyber hygiene. What, in your mind, are some ways that we can track how well we're doing in, making some progress, either on the specific norms front or this overarching notion of CyberPeace? Do we need a CyberPeace index of some kind so we can track, even country by country, to see how we're doing along various metrics? Are there other better ways to go about something like this? I'd welcome your thoughts along those lines. And perhaps, if it's okay, we can turn to Dr. Pent first. If you have any thoughts, either just from your work with the GGE or Open-Ended Working Group, or more broadly in India, and then we can turn to Vinit and Nitish.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. And you see, metrics is definitely an indicator of any solution that we are trying to propose. But if you recall what Julie from Australia said, that we are presently passing through periods of very critical nature as far as the cyber crime is concerned. Yeah. And one of the reasons is that during the pandemic, this oft repeated quote of being a perfect storm for cybercrime took place. And just for your information, one of the estimates is that in 2020, there's been a loss of about $6 trillion due to cybercrime. So with whatever hard work all of you had been doing, if a situation like a pandemic comes up, then it upsets all our metrics and figures, etc. So it may give a wrong impression. But definitely, I think one of the metrics could be the number of cyber incidents. And I would like to close the loop of the cyber incidents not only being reported, but those in which the prosecution has taken place. And I think Vinit also hinted at that when I see the statistics in my own country's various cybercrime cells, I find that out of, let's say, 1,000 reported crimes, and I'm including everything, crime against women, children, and financial frauds, everything, only about 15, that is 1/5, are converted into FIRs, which are the first information reports, which the police investigates, etc., which it is duty bound to investigate. And even out of those 15, the number that eventually the judge prosecutes is even less. So there is something wrong. While the technology-wise, the digital evidence and the chain of custody and etc., all that is being taken care of. Even in the cloud, we have found a solution as to how we will ensure the chain of custody. But at the end of it, the evidence that is taken and considered by the court and based on which the punishment is given, that is not happening. Because unless the threat of punishment is there, the attacker will not start his criminal activities, right? So I think that is more important before we get into the the metrics. There's a lot of work that we have to do in cleaning up the process, because there are the indices. There's a global cybersecurity index already and stuff like that. So I don't think we've reached that stage. There's a lot of work to be done in-house, both within the countries and amongst countries, before we start talking of indices for this.
Mm-hmm. 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 Excellent. Such a good point. And on that point, Vinit, do you have any thoughts on aligning, like Dr. Pent mentioned earlier, the goals so that we can build that consensus out? There's so many, I think, really well-intentioned, lists of norms and principles, etc. But they do differ, frankly. And as it was just pointed out, we do need to come together and build, toward greater consensus. And I think, civil society has an important role to play in helping kind of bring these different players, private and public sectors together. So do you have, I know you've given this a lot of thought in terms of those 10 goals that you mentioned, but have you also thought about how to align those and kind of build this consensus and kind of do that, matchmaking function that the CyberPeace Foundation is so good at?
No, definitely, Scott. In fact, when I speak about these key 10 steps or goals, this is aligned with the sustainable development goals, because that's how, in fact, if you see the mission and vision of CyberPeace, in fact, we clearly mention that we are aligned to the SDGs, and keeping SDGs in mind, these are the goals. And I see, in fact, that even the UNGG or the cyber norms that have been published by DFAT, Government of Australia, I see a lot of goals match to each other. So probably if we can do it like an exercise where we can map different goals together and maybe come out with a kind of a common goal, which all of us together as civil society, as industry, as academia, or as government, we come together to achieve. That is something that probably we need to do. Secondly, I completely agree with General Pant that metrics and all probably would come slightly later when we talk about metrics, index, and everything that will come later. There's a lot of work that we need to do in the country itself. And I'm talking as basic as prevention. I mean, prevention itself, there are many things that we need to do. Cyber hygiene, General Pant mentioned, is as important as personal hygiene. And that's what we as CyberPeace, we are trying to focus a lot more on prevention, because investigation, as I mentioned earlier, is a time-taking process and it involves a lot of things and complexities. So that is something that we need to focus. I mean, how we can prevent our vulnerable population. It could be the very first step, and I'm sure the same applies to the other countries. Simple things like integration of basic cyber hygiene into the STEM education is something that I see that's where we should start. So that it comes as a model. Like what we generally say is, we have studied moral science when we were in the school. Now we have come to an era where cyber morals need to be introduced, and there's one step that CyberPeace Foundation has undertaken. We had collaborated with Ministry of Education, and we have released a handbook with CBSE, which now is kind of it's an additional handbook as of now, but eventually we are planning to integrate it as a part of the official curriculum, so that students of all age groups, in fact, in early stages only, they are aware about what is correct, what are the rules of responsible online behavior, what to do if something goes wrong. So these are basic things that we as netizens should be aware of, and probably this is how we should take it up. And I'm sure there's a lot more that needs to be done. I believe we are in step 1, and we have to achieve the next 9 steps to make the cyberspace peaceful and stable. So, and with this, I'd like to request my colleague Nitish if he'd like to add anything here. Nitish, if you have any points.
Right. Thanks.
Sure.
Thanks. I think I think pretty much. I mean, most of the points have been covered. One additional thing that I feel that we lack pretty much all across the world is the fact that we don't do enough drills. People know that you have to have a strong password, but what does that translate into? How do you react in real time when you see something which looks like spam? So we need to have more active exercises in order to be able to actually build that cyber hygiene that you're talking about. In addition to all the resources like e-safety, for example, is doing a fantastic job at building these resources. We are doing a lot of work with the ministries here. With CBSC, we pushed out a handbook and things like that. But in addition, what we're also looking for in the times to come is to build these active exercises that everyone, people of all ages, can engage in. So that's one. On the index, I think I differ a little bit there. In my opinion, what I think is it's something like the ease of doing business index. Every year it nudges countries to have better policy. So maybe and I could envision this in a sense that a country that has, say, A, B, C, D, E rights for its citizens has a law against, say, access to the internet, reasonable restrictions defined, say declaration of whatever cyber capabilities that they're developing, say example, the NSA, Eternal Blue, and the whole incident that happened. So maybe an index like that as a starting point can be a good sort of a nudge mechanism that can push countries in the direction of adopting more transparent, inclusive, and cooperative policies. Maybe just to that effect, I would say that it can play a good role.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. No, thank you. And as I think we're all agreeing, there's certainly plenty more that needs to be done to build, a common consensus and definition around our end goals. So much of our attention is being, brought to bear on putting out whatever the latest fire is. It's tough to think, down the road 5-10 years ahead sometimes, but a lot of the great work that the government of India, that the CyberPeace Foundation are doing, I think are helping push us in that direction. And then of course, clarifying progress toward achieving these goals. And then, as you brought up, Dr. Pent, enforcing them as well is another key issue that I wish we had more time to talk about now. But for now, I'm hoping that everyone can join me in thanking so much our distinguished panelists, our keynote speaker, for their excellent remarks. We really, really appreciate it. We all need to do our part to make the internet a place where not only we can survive, but thrive on this Safer Internet Day. So thank you all so much for joining us. Thanks again to the CyberPeace Foundation. Thanks to our distinguished speakers for their wonderful remarks. And thank you for joining us. Have a great day, everybody.
Very well moderated, Scott. Thank you very much.
Oh, no, thank you, sir.
Thank
Namaste.
you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Scott.